In the 1930s, Ian's grandfather switched to another church in Ayr, Sandgate, where ultimately he was ordained as its deacon.
Ah, it's a pub. He would have loved that. The temperance movement completely defeated by Wetherspoons. This is extraordinary. I was well in the house of the Lord for to closing times with. There's gambling, there's drinking, there's smoking. Not much sign of fornication, but I suppose it's only 5 o'clock. Perfect spot for a sermon about temperance and the evils of drink. And I still like delivering it. I think it was Betty who I spoke to who said that my grandfather and her grandfather would not have been able to cope with the century at all. And I have a feeling this might have really been too much. I mean, as a theme pub, an old Presbyterian church, it's probably one too far, isn't it?
Ian's grandfather's professional life was as consistent as his beliefs. After returning from the First World War, he spent his entire career in one school.
Newton Academy.
The school is now closed, the surrounding tenements long since gone.
Now Newton House.
One member of staff from that era remembers him well.
So he taught here for 40 years.
He did.
Amazing.
Now this was the boys' side, that was the girls' side. If you're round the back, there's a big wall separates them. Near
Right.
the two shall meet. Now, come to dinner, the boys would line up, if you were supervising, you stood with the belt there, and every boy would come in, hands like that, and you inspect them.
So
Any
they
bit
clean.
up, stand to side. Stand to side. When you get them all in, you belted them, they wash their hands, and you said grace, heads down. Not a word had to be spoken. It was great.
Sounds like another world. It's so difficult trying to reconstruct what type of man he was, because all I've got is fragments.
I'd say he was the best headmaster I knew.
Did he ever talk to you about the war, the First World War?
He did. Your grandfather, he went out to France.
Right, you're sure of that?
Yes, and he spoke about the kilt as a method of dress during the First World War for fighting in.
Yeah, incredible.
Like your grandfather said, it was the worst piece of equipment that a soldier could have.
Yeah.
When it rained, it got heavy, it went away down there. And then in the winter time, the hem was all wet, it froze.
Oh,
He said they cut their legs. To prevent that, they wound bandages or putties round their knees, and then they urinated on them.
stiffen them up.
I suppose the ammonia and the urine would maybe help the cuts.
Oh, grim. Did he talk about anything else?
It seems that he was wrongly accused by a regimental sergeant major of temporarily deserting his post.
Oh, yes.
And the sergeant major wouldn't listen to reason.
Right.
So your grandfather thumped him.
Right.
And was reduced to a private.
Right. You don't know where that was?
No, I just know somewhere in France in the front line.
Right. Oh, fascinating.
Along with millions of others, David Hislop's First World War service record was destroyed in the Blitz. So though Ian now knows far more about his grandfather's life in Ayr, the war years remain a mystery.
Ironically, we've had the one single hard piece of evidence about what my grandfather was doing in the war in the family all along. It's a postcard to my grandfather, to dear old friend David, from a young Frenchman seen there in military uniform. And in his postcard, he makes it clear that he is writing to thank my grandfather for liberating him and presumably his family in Clary, which is in northern France. That's the only time we know exactly where he was, which was in October 1918, which would be barely a month before the end of the war.
Let's go.
Ian has recruited the rest of his family for his trip to the First World War battlefields in search of his grandfather.
Ah, there we go.
It's
Place
called...
Écossais, which means the place of the Scotsman, i.e. your great-grandfather. 9th of October 1918.
Clary has never forgotten what it owes to the Scottish regiments, so its mayor was determined to greet Ian in person.
Bonjour, monsieur.
Bonjour, Madame Foulon.
C'est vous le descendant
Oui, oui, c'est mon
du monsieur
grand-père.
qui s'est bien illustré. Était...
Ah oui, il est dans le régiment écossais,
Oui.
le Highland Light Infantry, avec le coup.
Entendu?
Pardon?
Ils ont joué du biniou écossais.
Du bignou.
Le biniou.
Ah oui, the bag for le bignou, ah oui.
Here you go.
Ah dear, my French really won't do.
Monsieur,
That was
je
a-
vous invite à prendre le verre de l'amitié
Ah,
à la mairie.
be rude not to. Merci beaucoup.
Mais je vous en prie.
À Paris.
Écosse.
À l'Écosse, oui.
À l'Écosse. Et vive les Écossais.
Et vive les Écossais.
Voilà. L'équipe. Et les bignous.
Et les bignou, et les kilts, yeah, oui.
Ian's grandfather's unit only reached Clary after a month of intense fighting. They're part of the big push to breach the indomitable German defence called the Hindenburg Line. The sector occupied by the 9th Highland Light Infantry was known as the Targel Ravine.
It's the start. The trenches are down there, they were all in the trenches, waiting for an order, and it came through about 10 o'clock at night. It's tomorrow morning, you're going up the valley.
For their war walk, the family have brought with them a regimental history, written by one of the officers.
It says in these sort of company memoirs of someone who was there that they had already discussed the scheme and thought this isn't practical, but they did it anyway. Your grandfather, they were in a trench here, and had to get out, stand up on these tapes, and they would look, I mean it's...
That where the cross
Yeah, where the cross is, that's where they had to get to, that's where the Germans were. In the grey dawn of a misty morning at 10 minutes to 6, the artillery barrage opened. That's our artillery, trying to soften up the Germans. It says here, the field guns did their best, but the 4-minute barrage was rather thin. I think that's probably British understatement, isn't it? It was obviously no use at all.
Then the Highlanders advanced through the mist. As soon as our men showed themselves, 3 advanced machine guns opened fire, causing some loss.
The Highlanders jumped into the trench, bayoneted the garrison and bombed the dugouts. The Highlanders went on, and the centre reached Gloucester Road, which is up here, so we're retreading the way they ran up in the mud. By the time they got to here, they'd lost 4 officers and 80 men, were either wounded or killed.
The fog was now thicker, and under its cover the Highlanders continued the advance.
And the trouble is they know that if the fog lifts, they've had it.
It was a blessing, because the fog screened our men, for the time being, from the murderous fire. A curse, because the Highlanders reached an isolated position, far beyond the troops in their flanks.
8:45 the fog cleared, so the fact they got to here, suddenly everything was visible again, so the Germans started pounding them with the guns. At 11 a.m. it was decided to abandon all that remained of the captured positions. So everything new that had been taken, all the ground they'd made up, they decided to abandon. And by this stage, our casualties now amounted to 9 officers and 350 men. That's about half of the people who started. So after a whole day and losing 350 men, they abandoned everything they'd achieved in the day. But the next morning, which is even more extraordinary, the Germans cleared out. They cleared out of everywhere. And at 11 a.m. the battalion advanced down the valley unopposed. So in the grand scheme of the war, although it looks like they achieved nothing, the the Germans did pull back and they moved forward. I'm not sure it would have felt like that at the time though, would it?
No.